Hello everyone and welcome to a new IK video. This is Kincaid from server M14, and in this video we're gonna talk about a lot of things. Mainly we're gonna talk about how to increase your march power in early game and in general. So this video will be aimed for the beginners, the kind of players who just entered season 1 or season 2, basically all the players who are in different stages on the game on how to increase your power on different things. So I'm gonna talk about a lot of things in this video, so hopefully I don't forget anything. I prepared a list to talk about, so if I forgot anything, remember to mention it down below in the comments and I will try to cover it in a different video. First, I would like to highlight the difference between actual power and the fake power, because not all the high setup players are actually strong, because setup doesn't really mean a lot in Infinity Kingdom, and this is something that I've been saying a lot recently. So if your setup is very high, doesn't mean that your march is strong, and if your setup is very low, doesn't also mean that your march is weak. I could show you some examples. For example, I'm actually beating a lot of these players in arena because I'm just using the right setup. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes I actually lose to Lord Yugo most of the time, then I win. But I'm actually using a Chaos Immortal. I don't have the specializations unlocked yet, so I'm still not having access to a lot of Apollo's power. So I'm lacking in setup and actual power. However, you can see that my march is actually performing fine. Anyway, the difference between actual power and fake power could be very clear when it comes to artifacts, because if you have a resilience rate artifact or a resilience value artifact, this is gonna give you a lot of power compared to other artifacts. For example, you can see here, this is a resilience value artifact that gives growth, and this is a physical defense artifact. So in some situations, I believe the physical defense artifact will be more valuable. It gives Charles a very high defense. You can see Charles have over 12,000 physical defense, and my Yi Senshin have around 9,000. However, if we compare the power that I get from both artifacts, let's have a look here. Let's remove this one. You can see that this one gives me almost 30k power, even though the artifact is not even maxed. It's only 3 stars. However, if we remove this one, you can see it gives only 19k power. You can see the difference is huge when it comes to both artifacts. However, in my opinion, I think the Charles artifact is way better, even though this one is 4 stars, by the way. This one is way better. It gives so much value to my Charles if I'm up against physical teams, because it gives Charles high physical defense, allowing him to provide more shields. So all in all, you can see that this artifact here has more value, yet it has less power. So this is the difference between actual power and fake power. So if you not, I'm gonna use this term a lot while I'm talking in this video. Anyway, let's get started. So one of the most important things to focus on when it comes to increasing your march power is the right technology. You need to focus in the right technology, especially in early game. I recommend in early game to start at the production tree. You need to get the rapid progress research at least to level 7 or 8, because this is gonna make your life a lot easier when it comes to upgrading the other technologies. You can see here I'm having it at max level because it gives me a boost to the technology speed to up to 30%. So this is number one. Number two, you can see that these techs here, or these technologies, the earlier ones, have a very high value. It gives 20% immortal attack. So this is very important. This is also very important if you're running a defensive immortals. It gives you also some really good stats for defensive stats. So these sticks here are actually easy to upgrade, cheap to upgrade, and it gives you so much potential. It increases your march power, and it actually gives you real value when it comes to the immortal stats. Now these sticks here, the one that has actually I call it the skills tick, because you can see it clearly in your immortals barracks. You can see here I have unlocked all these skills to my immortals, and these have very high value. This is actually the most important ticks when it comes to upgrading your immortals in early game. You can see that these ticks will be a bit more expensive compared to other ticks, so it gives actual stats to the troops. You can see here, if you click on the search button, you can see here how much stats it gives exactly to each and every troops type. You can see this gives around 12 physical attack to the immortal. I know that doesn't have actual value right now. However, in early game, this is very important because if you look at the troops tier, the earlier troops tier we use, maybe troops level 4. This is the troops level 4, I believe. No, this is the troops level 4. The troops level 4 have around 73 physical attack. So increasing this by 12, so you're getting around maybe 15% of the, or actually maybe a bit more, maybe 15% more physical attack for your T4 troops. And actually, if you compare it to the level T2 troops or T3 troops, it gives very high value. So this tech is actually very important in early game, especially in early game, because of the value it gives. Now, the other one, the one that gives defensive stats, this also gives physical defense or both the type of defenses to all troops. This is also very valuable because you're using around between 10,000 and 12,000 troops in early game per immortal. So each troops gets this value here, gets this stat. This is gonna be actually used for your own march. So it makes your own immortal a lot more defensive or offensive, depends on the type of stats it gives. And of course, we're not gonna forget the troops or the research, I mean, that gives HP. HP is actually the most important stat in the game because it makes your march very defensive and very tanky, especially the one that gives percentages. And the reason for that is that the troops HP is the highest stat out of all the other stats. You can see here the attack for the bowman is around 190 and the HP is 360. So when it comes to percentages, a 10% attack is going to give you around 19 attack, and a 10% for the HP is going to give you around 36. So any stats that gives percentages of the HP for the troops will be more valuable compared to any other stat in the game. And I'm comparing this when it comes to the bowmen. However, if we compare it to the cavalries, which have the highest HP out of all types of troops, you can see that the attack is around 290, even less than half of the HP. The HP is around 170, so you can see how valuable is the troops HP is. So keeping the troops the individual troop stats in mind is very actually crucial when it comes to increasing your march power. And of course, after the troop stick that increases the HP, which is this one here, comes the troops. I call it the potions. Everyone call it the potions. The potions gives you a fixed amount of HP for all type of troops, which is around 36. This is also very important. It increases your march performance and increases your troops power by a lot. So this is also very valuable when it comes to early game. So make sure to get these troops early if you're a competitive player and you would like to participate in kill events and early stage of the KVK. And finally, the last troop sticks in before you go into season 1 and unlock the troops that is available in season 1. We call it the troops skills. Each one of these have a different type of value because it depends on the type of troops. But however, this does not increase the power. This does not increase the march power. The power you see here is increased to your own technology power. This is you can find in the stats here. You can see this type of stats is called technology power. So my technology power right now is 237,000 because this is how much I upgraded in my tech tree. You can see that each one increases the technology power by 5,000. However, this does not increase your own march power, but it gives you a lot of value because the bowman troops will be able to shoot additional normal attack. And of course, the most important one is the cavalry because they apply stun for 3 seconds and you can clearly see the stun during fights when you're watching a replay. And of course, the shell block have a chance to block one of the attacks, which is the normal attacks. This is also very important for the shieldmen. And of course, the spearmen will be able to attack immortal in a row. So they attack the front row and the back row immortal in front of them. This is all the troops, the technology that gives power, march power, and valuable power in season 1. And of course, later on, you will be unlocking this one here that gives both attack and defense. I don't want to talk a lot about technology because I know it's very important. However, later on, you will be able to unlock the troops number, the one that increases your own immortal troop number. This is in the immortal tree. This is also, I cannot actually explain how important is this, because the higher the troops number in your own march, the stronger the march will be. It gives very valuable performance to your own march, and it gives you very high power as well. So this is also very important if you would like to increase your march power and your march performance, both of them. One thing that is also very important that a lot of people forget about is the defense uh, tree here, which is the iron body. Iron body is so broken that they had to nerf it a while ago. It used to decrease the damage to the garrison by 10%, which is all the attacks that you receive while defending your own castle. However, right now it is only 5%. However, it is still very important for march performance. It does not increase the power, but it's very important for the march performance. So I would like to talk now about the alliance, because alliance tick is also very important when it comes to increase the power. In Throne of the Supreme, the buffs that you get from the alliance and the alliance territory is not applied. So you can see here that my march power is down to 600 and almost 70,000. However, my current march power is 730,000. This is because I'm in the main alliance. We have all the territories in Nurheim. You can see all the buffs that I'm getting from the alliance is 16.5% troops HP. This is actually the most important stat that I'm getting from the alliance. The immortal attack is 50%. You can get more. I think we're missing one capital, and the troops attack is up to 5%. This is all the stats that I'm getting from the territories of the alliance. And of course, the technology itself is very important, because we can see here this one gives attack, this one here gives HP. This is again the most important stat that you're looking for your own immortals and troops. And here you can see it gives defensive stats. And of course, there is a couple more which is the home turf. It gives you immortal attack if you're fighting on your own territory, and this one here reduces the losses. They're seriously wounded troops if you're fighting on your own territory. Next, let's talk about the immortal level. This is actually aimed more at the beginners at the very early game. Immortal level is also very important. You can see here most of my immortals is maxed. So make sure to attack a lot of gnomes, because it's gonna give you a lot of XP. I did attack a lot of gnomes, and I keep resetting my immortals. I explained this in one of my previous videos. So I'm getting a lot of XP. You can see here I can upgrade actually multiple immortals from level 1 to level 55 even without using all the XP that I have. I know I've been slacking a lot recently, so I used a lot of XP to upgrade my current immortals. However, I can gather more anytime I want, so it will be fine. So keeping your immortals at high level will allow them to lead more troops, and of course it's gonna increase their own stats. So let's take a look here at any random immortal that we have. For example, William have a 255 physical attack. However, if we increase his level by 1, you can see the physical attack actually increased by a lot, almost 10 points. So imagine increasing his level by 55. So increasing their level will increase their own stats and the amount of troops that they can lead. And of course, after level 30, they will be able to cube artifacts, and not to forget about the immortal boosts. So when it comes to developing immortals itself, the first thing that you need to keep in mind is immortal level, which is the most easy, I believe. Second is the immortal boost. Third is the immortal equipments, acquiring the right equipment. If you're after level, I think level 30 gnomes, you will be able to acquire epic equipments that have a specific element to it. This also gives you more stats. So acquiring the right equipment and upgrading these equipments to the highest level available in your season, and of course acquiring gems for these equipments. For example, I have Alex here. I'm using level 6 and level 7 physical attack. You can see here my immortal stat is almost 7,000. However, if we removed these gems, it's down to 6,000. So upgrading the gems is also very important, and upgrading the equipments is also very, very important. And of course, the immortal boost, make sure to clear Wheel of Time, the highest level that is available to you, as soon as possible, because the higher level that you have in Wheel of Time, the more easier it is to upgrade your immortal boost level. And upgrading the immortal boost level is also very important because it gives you different stats. You can look it up while you're upgrading the immortal. Again, I'm trying to save as much time as possible in this video. I would like to talk about specialization and choosing the right one. However, I'm gonna keep this in a different video, but I'm gonna talk about a general idea of the specializations. I'm using a lot of immortals with different specialization. For example, let's talk about the support immortals because these are one of the most important ones as well. I'm using battle excitation at max level for my Emperor Ken, and the reason I'm using it is because it gives the other damage dealer that is next to Emperor Ken these kind of buffs here. It gives him energy regain amount at the start of the fight by 200, so my Apollo will start with an additional 200 energy at the beginning of the fight, and he will get 40% damage increase for the duration of the fight as long as Ken Emperor is alive. So this is very important to keep in mind. This is a 40% damage for the damage dealer that is next to Ken Emperor. If I used any of these, I know they're also strong. However, they are actually not as good as this one if you're using a back row damage dealer, either a mage or a ranged immortals. So make sure you're using the right tree for the specialization on all your immortals as well. If you're using a mage, make sure you're using the crit one. If you're using a ranged immortal, I'm actually thinking about using this one because my Apollo is very low and the crit rate will be very low as well when I unlock the specialization, so we'll not be critting a lot. So increasing the ultimate skill damage will be the better option for now, and once I unlock a high level for this one, I'll be able to switch. And of course, the small nodes and all these stuff increases the march power and the march performance, so keep these in mind as well. All right, so let's talk about the Tower of Knowledge right now. I understand that different skill tiers gives different power. For example, my corrosive power here is an epic skills. It gives Apollo almost 17,000 power, right? However, I have energy mastery, which happens to be a legendary skill, and it gives Apollo 19,000 powers, and you can see the difference is huge. Even though my Apollo doesn't have that much power compared to the other immortals, you can see here he's at 100 and almost 14k powers. However, my Yi Sun Chen is at 186, my Ken Emperor is at 185. And if you compare this to Fighting Master, which gives only 14k, also the difference is huge. However, why I'm not using another epic skill here? Because I'm trying to make the most out of the skills that I have, and also Fighting Master is the best onslaught skill for my Apollo. I don't have full fate, I don't have any protection against control, so I'm using Fighting Master because it gives immunity to control. So this is the best skill on slot. So not only, so I could use any other skill that gives more power, so that does not mean that I will have the best performance for my march. However, keep in mind that having higher tier skills means more power for your march, but it doesn't mean always the best performance. So make sure to keep this in mind. Always try to find the best combination of skills to use your own march, and make sure you're always using the best in slot skills, because this will be giving you the advantage against other players. All right, so one last thing is the Immortal portraits. The Immortal portraits is very important to work on. I don't have a lot of Crimson Moonlight from my Apollo. I'm missing a lot of value from my own Immortal here, because at level 40 portrait, I get another 10% physical damage, of course another 10% accuracy rate, but I'm looking more for the damage. And of course the defensive stats and the offensive stats, I get more physical defense, I get more physical attack, so these are also very important. So upgrading the Immortal portrait is very important. However, I'm gonna keep reminding you that not to waste all the Stardust, all the Crimson Moonlight on Immortals you're not planning to use in the future. I upgraded Alex, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, to boost to portrait 30. However, I'm not using him on my march right now, so I'm kind of regret upgrading him or investing him to this much up to level 30, so I could have at least upgraded Charles since I'm using him for now. And of course I could have saved some for my Bjorn, since I'm planning to use him in the future as well. So this is something to keep in mind. Portraits is very important. However, if you're not planning to use the Immortal for a long term, make sure not to waste all your Stardust on him. Okay, one more thing is the dragon's level and the dragon talents and the dragon portraits as well, because this is very important. Dragon level gives, I would like to say, fake power, because you can see that these are all the stats that I'm getting from my dragon, because I upgraded his level to level 55. You can see that all my immortals gets 114 physical attack and 152 physical defense, and so on for the magical attack and the magical defense. These stats are not a lot. I believe that these stats are not that valuable. However, the reason that I upgraded my dragon to level 55 is just because it's easy in conquest, and I need to upgrade him to at least level 54 to upgrade all the levels for my dragon talents up to level 8. Level 59, level 9 unlocks at level 56, and level 8 unlocks at level 54. So I needed at least to upgrade him, to upgrade the dragon to level 54. So upgrading the dragon levels at early season is not really that important unless you have enough crystals to upgrade the dragon talents. So keep this in mind, because it consumes a lot of speed ups, and you will not be able to afford it if you are a free to play or a low spender in early season. So you need to wait at least until you reach conquest season, so you can invest a lot of speed ups and gold into the dragon's level. After that, of course, the dragon talents is very crucial for any march. The amount of stats that you get from your own dragon is actually crazy compared to the dragon level. You see here that I'm getting around 114 physical attack for each immortal. However, inside the dragon tree, I'm getting 1080 physical attack for each and every immortal in my march. And as for the magical attack, it is almost 1000. However, the most important stat that you're looking for inside a dragon tree is the damage increase bonus and the damage reduction taken, which is the claw. This one here, you get 2 claws in each and every dragon tree, the one that increases your damage by 5%, and both 2 armors, the one that reduces the damage taken by 5%. So you get a total of 10% damage increase, 10% damage decrease taken. So this is also very important. This not only increases your march power by a big amount, but it increases your march performance by a crazy amount. It gives you an advantage over other players who do not have these 2 stats by a lot. And you will notice this if you are playing against someone who doesn't have his dragon tree developed. So something very important that I would like to highlight is the immortal stats and detailed attributes. This is very important to keep in mind. Not only it increases your march power, but it's also have probably the most important factor when it comes to immortal performance, especially the energy regen, which a lot of players forget about, because energy regen will actually your casting, how many times casting your ultimate skill during a fight will actually depend on the energy regen that you have. This is why using the talent, the specialization for Emperor Ken that I talked about earlier is very important, and you can see energy regen for Emperor Ken is actually crazy. Okay, general few things that I would like to mention is the troops tier. Troops tier is actually very important when it comes to march performance and increasing your march power. Each type of troops or each tier of troops increase your power by around, I think, 3 to 5k. However, bowmen tend to increase the power more, since you have 2 immortals that have that lead bowmen in your march, which is the back row, and you need to keep an eye on these stats here, which is the troops stats, the individual troops stats, because you can see here the difference between troops tier troops 6 and tier troops 8 is actually insane. You can see that the troops attack for bowmen is around 135 plus 91. However, for troops 8 it is almost 190 plus 120. This are all the bonuses that I'm getting from either the alliance tech, the technology tech, or the territory tech. This is all the stats that I'm getting. However, this is the base stat for the troops themselves. This is also something to keep in mind. This is something very important to look at. And if you're comparing between you and a friend of yours or someone that you're competitive with in your own server, make sure also to compare the stats for your own troops. This is also something very important. And of course, I'm gonna mention it one more time since it's very important. The troops count. The troops count tech is very important. So make sure to upgrade this. Make sure to focus this because it is also very important. One last thing that I would like to talk about is the elemental synergy. I know a lot of people are not interested in this since there is a lot of hybrid marches, a lot of mixes that you can use between immortals of different elements. However, this is also something very, very important to keep in mind. I've unlocked the second synergy because I'm using Apollo, and Apollo is a case immortal, so he automatically turns into an Earth immortal in this march. So you can see here I'm using 4 units of Earth and 1 unit of wind. So this is why I unlocked the second one. I deployed 4 units of the same element. I did not deploy the 5th unit because I'm using the best in slot, which is King Emperor, because of his wounds. However, if I have unlocked this, I would get more power since increasing the troops by 10% will actually give me a very high value both in power and performance. Imagine increasing this amount by another 10%, which is around I mean the HP, yeah, another 10%, which will be around plus another 36 HP for each and every troop in my march. And as for the cavalries, since they have the highest HP, will be around 47. Keep in mind the dodge rate artifacts, such as this one, gives an insane amount of power. However, it's not really valuable because dodge is not a thing, is not in the meta right now. All the troops or all the immortals have a very high accuracy rate compared to the dodge rate, so you will never see actually physical attack immortals have a very high dodge rate when it comes to landing their own attacks. So dodge is not a thing anymore. However, we're trying to use the best in slot either way. It is actually better than using a physical attack artifact for the support immortal that I have here. Anyway, hopefully I've managed to cover everything when it comes to increasing your march power and increasing your march performance as well. So hopefully this will be all. Hopefully I did not forget anything. And if I did, make sure to mention it down below in the comments. I will read your comments. And this will be all for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and have a wonderful day.